US President Donald Trump hits back after Intel chiefs challenge his most prominent national security claims, including those on North Korea. He says there's a decent chance the North will abandon its nuclear weapons. Even an underwhelming fourth quarter can't stop the Samsung train in 2018. The South Korean tech giant posts record profits last year on strong semiconductor sales. Plus, the US Federal Reserve keeps its key rate unchanged and pledges to be patient toward future hikes. Our top story this morning, though, the world's biggest smartphone maker, Samsung Electronics, has released its final earnings report for 2018. For the year as a whole, sales soared to an all-time high, but earnings in the fourth quarter dropped sharply, mainly due to sluggish demand in the memory chip business and growing competition in the smartphone sector as well. For more, let's have our Kim Ji-yeon on the line with us. So, Ji-yeon, compared to the preliminary estimates, no huge surprises today.
No, in fact, I reported earlier this month that for Samsung, 2018 could be summed up as bittersweet, and today's earnings report confirms that. Sales and operating profits both hit a yearly all-time high in 2018 due to a semiconductor boom that lasted until the third quarter of last year. The company's combined sales for 2018 amounted to $219.3 billion, some $2 billion more than its preliminary estimate released earlier this month. Operating profits for 2018 amounted to nearly $53 billion, which is a $0.6 billion less than its earlier estimate, but is still a record high. Its operating profits in the fourth quarter of last year were similar to the preliminary estimate of $9.7 billion, which is a 28.7% drop from the previous year. Sales during the October to December period last year were slightly up from the previous estimate at $53.3 billion, a 10.2% drop on year. Samsung said the disappointing Q4 earnings are mainly due to global chip makers adjusting their inventories and its main clients cutting their orders. The company says it expects to recover in the second quarter of this year, particularly in its chip business and with an expansion of its premium products, including OLED displays. But some analysts, like the one I talked to earlier this month, predicted the worst may be yet to come for Samsung, and that a dramatic uptick in the company's earnings is unlikely since semiconductor prices are expected to drop further this year in response to growing signs of a slowdown in the global economy and rising uncertainties in trade. The general consensus among local market watchers is that Samsung may be able to rebound in the latter half of the year thanks to seasonal factors. Mark?
Well, thank you, Ji-yeon, for that. And if there's one company that can endure a bit of a downturn, it certainly is Samsung Electronics. Now, the so-called Gwangju job project has finally received the green light. It paves the way for the establishment of a joint venture with another one of the nation's biggest companies, Hyundai Motor. South Korea's biggest automaker can now build its first factory in the southwestern city in over 2 decades. The Gwangju City Council will sign the deal this afternoon. The project is garnering a lot of attention here as it's the first investment model initiated by a city council instead of the central government. According to the deal, Hyundai Motor will produce mini SUVs in Gwangju from 2021. With an annual capacity of 100,000 vehicles, it's expected to create 10,000 to 12,000 new jobs in the city. South Korea's overall industrial output dropped last month, mainly due to a fall in semiconductor production. According to Statistics Korea, industrial output in December decreased by 0.6% from the previous month. The agency said that the decline was due to less production in the chip and auto industries. Semiconductor production dropped by 4.5% due to lower demand. Equipment investment also edged down by 0.4%, mainly in the machinery sector. Both production and investment have declined for 2 months in a row now. The US Federal Reserve has frozen its target interest rate, signaling an end to its sustained period of rate hikes. The Fed has also vowed to be patient as it considers future adjustments, a decision which is actually in stark contrast with its stance only a month ago. Kim Kyoung-soo reports.
The Federal Reserve has held its target interest rate steady at 2.25 to 2.5%. Following its Federal Open Market Committee meeting on Wednesday, it also reiterated that it will be patient as the Fed evaluates future rate hikes.
In this environment, we believe we can best support the economy by being patient in evaluating the outlook before making any future adjustment to policy.
The statement released by the rate-setting body also said the Fed would continue to rely on data for future decisions, adding that the U.S. economy remains on solid footing.
The U.S. economy is in a good place, and we will continue to use our monetary policy tools to help keep it there. The jobs picture continues to be strong, with the unemployment rate near historic lows and with stronger wage gains.
This is in contrast with the Fed's last statement in mid-December, in which it said some further gradual rate increases would be warranted. Economists also forecast the Fed would freeze rates in January, according to CNBC, which surveyed more than 50 market watchers. Since 2015, when the Fed announced an end to its zero interest rate policy, it has raised rates 9 times and hiked them 4 times last year alone. Kim Kyoung-soo, Arirang News.
Now, US President Donald Trump has hit out at his top intel chiefs for their comments on North Korea. Taking to Twitter, he said there's a decent chance the regime will abandon its nuclear weapons. His tweets came shortly after the US intelligence community said they can't see Kim Jong-un giving up his nukes, as they are a big form of leverage. Lee Seung-jae reports.
President Trump is projecting optimism about his ability to get North Korea to denuclearize, despite recent remarks by one of his top intel chiefs, Dan Coats, who told senators this week that Pyongyang is unlikely to fully give up its nuclear weapons program. In a flurry of tweets on Wednesday, Trump said Washington's relationship with North Korea is the best it has ever been, and there is, quote, a decent chance the North will abandon its nuclear weapons. However, this week's comments by the Director of National Intelligence aren't the first from a senior Trump administration official to suggest the North isn't serious about denuclearization. In a report released Wednesday, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, citing commercial satellite imagery from January 20th, also said there has been no new dismantling activity at the missile facility in North Korea's Dongchangni since August. After their summit in Singapore last June, Kim Jong-un committed to permanently shut down the missile engine test site and launch pad under the observation of international experts. Along with his optimism over North Korea's eventual denuclearization, President Trump also patted himself on the back for his other successes with North Korea. He hailed the North's lack of nuclear and missile tests, the return of remains of some American troops killed during the Korean War, and the safe release of American hostages. Calling it a whole different story compared to the previous Obama administration, President Trump said he looks forward to seeing the North Korean leader at their next summit. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Senior officials from the two Koreas are set to meet at the Joint Liaison Office in the North Korean border town of Kaesong to discuss inter-Korean road projects. South Korea is sending 3 officials from the Ministries of Unification and Land, and the North 3 from its Environment Ministry. Seoul says the delegations will exchange road-related technical data. It's also possible they'll discuss schedules for their joint inspections of eastern roads in the north. Seoul and Pyongyang checked North Korea's western expressway in August of last year, but they have not checked the eastern ones yet, despite holding a groundbreaking ceremony at the end of last year. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has expressed regret over the South Korean government's response to the nation's court rulings on the wartime forced labor issue, where South Koreans were forced to work for little to no pay during the Second World War. Addressing questions in the lower house of the Japanese parliament on Wednesday, Abe said Tokyo will deal with the issue unwaveringly based on international laws. He explained this includes demanding an appropriate response from Seoul. This is the second time Prime Minister Abe has expressed regret over the issue since the turn of the year. Top officials from the United States and China kicked off a critical round of talks on Wednesday aimed at ending their 6-month trade war, which really has caused chaos in the global economy. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Adam. So Adam, what are we hearing thus far?
Well, Mark, negotiations are underway, as you said, but as of yet, we don't know what has been said between both sides. The two-day meeting is taking place next door to the White House. It is the highest level talk since President Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping agreed to a 90-day truce in their trade war at the end of last year. The U.S. delegation is being led by Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, and Beijing's Vice Premier Liu He is heading the Chinese side. President Trump plans to meet with Mr. Liu at the conclusion of the talks on Thursday. The discussions come as both countries face a March 2nd deadline to reach a trade agreement. If they don't, then the Trump administration will raise tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese imports, and Beijing will likely retaliate. The meeting also comes just days after the U.S. Justice Department slapped a slew of federal charges against Chinese telecoms giant Huawei and its chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou. The White House insists that issue is separate from trade talks, but given Beijing's heated reaction, it is hard to imagine that Chinese officials will not raise the issue during the meeting. Meanwhile, the U.S. side will likely bring up its claim that China is stealing American intellectual property rights. It is also pushing for China to end policies that Washington says force U.S. companies to transfer technology to Chinese firms. Beijing denies the allegations and may not be willing to address these issues. On the whole, hopes for the negotiations to end well are high, but expectations are low. Thailand has ordered more than 400 schools in Bangkok to close for the rest of the week due to toxic smog. The Thai capital is experiencing some of its worst air pollution with harmful levels of ultrafine dust particles. The Air Quality Index, or AQI, is used by cities to determine levels of air pollution. AQI levels under 25 are considered to be safe to breathe. The reading in Bangkok on Wednesday evening was 175. The government has tried a slew of measures to try to clear the air. These include sending water spraying drones or hosing down streets, but they have all had little impact. Meanwhile, schools and offices are also closing in the U.S. Midwest as an Arctic cold snap sweeps over the region. At least 7 people have been killed in several states as a result of the deep freeze. Midwestern Wisconsin, Michigan and Illinois, among others, have all declared states of emergency. Officials are warning of almost instant frostbite as temperatures are dropping to minus 50 degrees Celsius in some places. Ice-cold winds are also being accompanied by heavy snow, causing travel chaos. Thousands of flights have been cancelled, along with dozens of train services, most of them in and out of Chicago.
Thank you, as always, to Arnaud Adam for the international news there. Now, the big domestic political story on Wednesday was the sentencing of the governor of Gyeongsang-Namdo province to 2 years behind bars. The Seoul Central District Court found Kim Kyoung-soo guilty of colluding with a power blogger to manipulate online comment rankings for political purposes. Yoon Jung-min with the details.
Kim Kyoung-soo, the current governor of Gyeongsang-Namdo province and former Democratic Party lawmaker, was sentenced to 2 years in prison on Wednesday for allegedly colluding with a blogger to manipulate the rankings of online comments for political purposes.
The governor denied the allegations, but the Seoul Central District Court found that he conspired with blogger Kim Dong-won, known by the alias Druking, to use a software program to rig millions of likes or dislikes on online comment sections. Kim was detained right after the verdict, but said he cannot accept the ruling and will fight until the end. He suggested that he would lodge an appeal with a higher court. The court found that Kim colluded with Druking and his accomplices to develop a comment rigging software program, KingCrab, and that he took part in opinion rigging crimes to benefit the ruling Democratic Party ahead of the presidential election in 2017. Kim was also found guilty of promising the position of consul general in Sendai, Japan, to one of Druking's accomplices in exchange for his help. For violating the Public Official Election Act, Governor Kim was sentenced to another 10 months in prison but suspended for 2 years. If higher courts uphold the ruling, then the law says Kim will lose his seat as governor and will be replaced by the vice governor in an acting capacity. In another ruling on the same day, Druking, real name Kim Dong-won, was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months behind bars on charges of online comment rigging. Druking was also found guilty of bribery. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, as you might expect, there was contrasting reaction from the domestic political arena to Governor Kim's sentence. The ruling Democratic Party is sticking by its man, defending the former Liberal lawmaker. The opposition bloc is expected to really use this ruling to step up its political offensive against the ruling party, especially considering that big general elections are taking place next year. Kim Min-ji reports.
The ruling against Gyeongsangnam-do Province Governor Kim Kyoung-soo is expected to have serious implications for the ruling Democratic Party. Kim, who is a close aide of President Moon Jae-in, was considered a strong potential candidate for the presidency. The ruling party said it regrets the decision by the lower court, adding that Kim will be proven innocent through the appeals process. The party claimed that the ruling was politically motivated and that it damages confidence in the judiciary seen to be making a predetermined decision. However, the ruling was welcomed at the other end of the spectrum. The main opposition Liberty Korea party called Kim's conviction a matter of course, calling on him to resign from his post immediately. The conservatives claimed that the opinion rigging had a big influence in the 2017 presidential election and called into question the legitimacy of its outcome. The party said the president should say whether he was aware of what was happening. The minor opposition Panmunjeom party said that any act that infringes on democracy is not acceptable and something like this should not happen again in Korean politics. Liberal minor parties were more or less on the same page, calling opinion rigging a crime against democracy. Pundits say Wednesday's ruling could spell trouble for the ruling party, which is already grappling with scandals involving some of its lawmakers. The opposition bloc is expected to step up its rhetoric, especially with the general elections just over a year away. On top of that, the ruling could deal a blow to the Moon administration, which has been continuously pushing to root out corruption, having taken the helm from the Park Geun-hye government, which was brought down from abusing its power. The presidential office released a short statement that the court's decision was unexpected and that they will wait patiently as the ruling is appealed. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The Korea Tourism Organization and the Culture Ministry held an opening ceremony on Wednesday for their latest project. It is dubbed New Lane Towards Peace. It's part of their global campaign to promote the demilitarized zone, the DMZ, as a must-see tourist hotspot. And having been there a few times myself, I must say I agree that it should be. Hong Yu reports.
The railroad on Dokkae Bridge was the only rail link over the Imjingang River, connecting the south and north. It was bombarded during the Korean War and it remains destroyed to this day. But what would it look like if the railroad was reconnected? On Wednesday, media art was used to show how people would travel along the railway, which goes not just to North Korea, but beyond to the entire Eurasian continent, becoming the new lane towards peace. Pictures of finger hearts and messages wishing for peace from more than 57,000 people from 190 countries decorated the interior of the train.
Through the hashtag #LoveForDMZ campaign, we hope to position the DMZ as the place where peace starts instead of a place that symbolizes war and separation.
Descendants of Korean War veterans from the U.S. and Thailand were present at the ceremony and received a plaque of appreciation.
And my dream is to be able to go to Hungnam and to Hamhung, because Hungnam is where my grandfather was and was where they rescued 100,000 refugees, during the Korean War.
The virtual railway that can be seen inside the media train will continue to show the messages of peace and hope for the Korean peninsula written by the tourists that visit the demilitarized zone. 홍유, Arirang News, Paju.
Now, South Korean super rookie Lee Kang-in has signed a deal with Valencia CF to join its first team squad. Quite the achievement. The Spanish club revealed Wednesday it has registered the South Korean teenager into the first team on a permanent basis until 2022, after joining Valencia's youth setup all the way back in 2011. The 17-year-old attacking midfielder made his first team debut in October of last year and has made a great impression during his appearances in the senior squad. The club said he will wear the number 16 shirt and have a huge buyout clause if any other clubs want to try and nab him of 80 million euros. He becomes just the 5th South Korean footballer to sign a professional contract with a Spanish club.
Good morning. The last day of January is wrapping up on a snowy note in most of the southern provinces, mixed with rain. And there is a heavy snow advisory in place for Daegu and parts of Gyeongsang-do and Jeollado provinces. But more snowfall of 1 to 8 centimeters is in the forecast until this evening hours. So drive with extra care and please don't hurry out on the roads. Temperature-wise, readings were not too bad this morning, but we will notice a big drop in the mercury along with biting winds starting this afternoon. So dress warmly, but strong winds will blow away the dust in the air, and the freezing morning is on tap for Friday. This afternoon could even feel chillier than this morning, with highs in the low single digits in most areas. Next Monday, though, is Ipchun already, marking the beginning of spring, according to the traditional Korean calendar. Also, one of the biggest holidays in South Korea, the Lunar New Year, is right upon us, and the weather should be mainly generous over the holiday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave the news for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. Stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up. And we also have our next newscast. That's at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.